Have you ever noticed how a simple bag, with a brown canvas covered in tiny golden initials, can instantly change the way someone is perceived? It's not just leather and stitches, it's a symbol that whispers wealth, power, and timeless elegance. But what if I told you that behind those interlocking letters, the empire of Louis Vuitton began with a poor boy walking miles through the French countryside, carrying nothing but ambition? His story is not just about fashion. It's about survival, reinvention, and the creation of one of the most unshakable status symbols in human history. Before we dive into this journey from dusty roads to glossy runways, take a second to support this channel. A like and a subscription go a long way in helping us tell more stories like this one, and I promise you, what you'll discover today will change the way you look at luxury forever. The year is 1835. Imagine a 13-year-old boy, Louis Vuitton, leaving his small village in Angers, France. His mother had just passed away, his father too, and his stepmother was harsh and unsympathetic. Louis had no money, no safety net, no family to rely on. So he made a decision. He would leave. Paris was 300 miles away, but to Louis it was the center of possibility. And so, on foot, he began walking. He slept where he could, worked odd jobs for food, and pushed through rain, mud, and cold. Each step was a rebellion against his fate. That journey lasted 2 years. When he finally reached Paris at 15, he was exhausted, but alive. The city he entered was a buzzing hive of industry, fashion, and innovation. The railroads had transformed travel, and wealthy families were now journeying further and faster than ever before. But here's the catch. Travel was messy. Trunks and luggage were bulky, impractical, and prone to damage. The aristocracy needed something better, something sturdy yet elegant. And this is where young Louis found his opportunity. He apprenticed with Monsieur Maréchal, one of Paris's finest trunk makers. It might sound humble today, but at the time, being a trunk maker was both an art and a science. A well-made trunk wasn't just storage. It was a statement of refinement. Louis quickly stood out. His precision, his eye for detail, and his willingness to innovate made him indispensable. Clients began to request him personally. And among those clients was none other than the Empress of France, Eugénie de Montijo, wife of Napoleon III. Serving as her personal boxmaker and packer, Louis learned not only the craft, but also the tastes of the elite. He was no longer just a boy from Angers. He was now inside the circles of power. But Louis was more than a skilled artisan. He was a visionary. He saw a problem that nobody else was solving. Trunks at the time were made with rounded tops to let rainwater run off, but that made them impossible to stack. For people traveling with dozens of trunks, this was chaos. In 1854, Louis opened his own workshop on Rue Neuve des Capucines, near the Place Vendôme, and launched his revolutionary idea: flat-topped rectangular trunks. They were lightweight, airtight, and stackable. It sounds simple now, but it changed travel forever. Word spread fast. Louis's designs were not only practical, they were beautiful. Covered in durable gray canvas known as Trianon, his trunks became the must-have accessory for anyone who mattered. Royalty, explorers, wealthy industrialists, all wanted Louis's creations. And here lies one of the first great lessons of his story. True innovation often comes from solving the most ordinary frustrations in extraordinary ways. But with success came danger. The trunks were so popular that imitators sprang up almost immediately, producing cheap knockoffs that tried to mimic his style. Counterfeiting, believe it or not, is as old as luxury itself. Louis understood that protecting the integrity of his brand was as important as creating it, and this instinct, to fight imitation with innovation, would later lead to the birth of one of the most recognizable patterns in the world. The Franco-Prussian War in 1870 threw France into turmoil. Paris was under siege, businesses shuttered, and Louis had to start again almost from scratch. Yet even in chaos, opportunity found him. After the war, as the wealthy resumed traveling, the demand for luxury trunks exploded once more. Louis adapted quickly, opening a new workshop in Asnières, just outside Paris. This would become not only the heart of his production, but also the home of the Vuitton family for generations. At this point, the Vuitton name was already respected, but Louis was laying the foundation for something even bigger. His son, Georges, entered the business, and together they introduced more innovations. The lock system that made trunks virtually unbreakable, and later, the famous damier canvas in 1888. That checkerboard pattern, stamped with Marque Louis Vuitton déposé, meaning registered trademark, was one of the earliest attempts to protect against counterfeiting. It was smart, it was stylish, and it was the beginning of Louis Vuitton as more than just a maker of trunks. It was a brand. But let us pause for a moment and ask, why does this story matter to us today? After all, few of us travel with giant steamer trunks anymore. The deeper truth is that Louis Vuitton tapped into something universal, the human craving for objects that carry meaning beyond their function. A trunk was not just about holding clothes. It was about signaling identity, class, and aspiration. Even now, when we see someone carry a Vuitton bag, we don't think about the stitching or the material. We think about what it represents. Louis passed away in 1892, but the empire was just beginning. Georges officially took over, and it was under him that the iconic monogram canvas was born in 1896. Those intertwined L and V letters, surrounded by floral motifs, weren't just decoration. They were a direct response to counterfeits flooding the market. In creating the monogram, Georges achieved two things at once. He protected his father's legacy, and he created a timeless aesthetic that carried cultural weight far beyond a simple logo. Think about it. Over a century later, that pattern is still instantly recognizable across the globe. The Vuitton trunks became symbols not only of wealth, but also of adventure. Explorers carried them across Africa, aristocrats sent them on steamships, and Hollywood stars later flaunted them on glamorous voyages. Each trunk seemed to whisper stories of journeys, secrets, and treasures. They were built not only to endure, but to impress, and this is perhaps why Louis Vuitton transitioned so seamlessly from practical object to status symbol. The brand was always about more than luggage. As the 20th century unfolded, the world changed, and so did Louis Vuitton. Cars, planes, and new lifestyles demanded lighter, smaller, more versatile designs. The company responded by evolving into handbags, suitcases, and accessories. Yet through all these transformations, the heart of the brand, the promise of combining function with luxury, remained untouched. And that consistency, that stubborn devotion to quality, is why the brand didn't fade into history like so many of its rivals. Of course, the story of Louis Vuitton isn't just about products. It's about mythology. It's about how an object becomes a story we tell ourselves. When a young woman saves for her first Vuitton bag, it's not because the leather is tougher than another brand's. It's because, for her, carrying that bag is stepping into a narrative of elegance, of belonging to a lineage that stretches back to aristocrats, empresses, and innovators. This is the power of symbols. But here's where the tension lies. Luxury brands walk a fine line between exclusivity and accessibility. Make your products too rare, and you risk irrelevance. Make them too common, and you lose the aura of prestige. Louis Vuitton mastered this balance by carefully controlling supply, by refusing to discount, and by investing in experiences that make customers feel they are joining something larger than themselves. From its earliest days, Vuitton understood that luxury isn't about selling bags, it's about selling dreams. And yet, behind the dream, there was always the shadow of imitation. Counterfeit Louis Vuitton products became a global phenomenon in the 20th century, flooding markets from Asia to Europe. For some, buying a fake Vuitton was almost a rebellion, a way to borrow status without paying the price. But ironically, even these knockoffs only reinforced the brand's aura. After all, nobody bothers to copy something unless it's valuable. In a twisted way, every fake bag testified to the real brand's power. What's striking about the Vuitton story is not only its endurance, but its adaptability. From the dusty roads of 19th-century France to the sleek runways of Paris Fashion Week, from aristocratic trunks to crossbody bags on Instagram influencers, the brand has always found a way to remain relevant. That isn't an accident, it's strategy. Each generation of leadership reimagined what Vuitton could mean while staying anchored to its roots. And perhaps that's where we find the real rise of Louis Vuitton. Not in the canvas, not in the trunks, not even in the monogram, but in the transformation of an object into a narrative that people crave to participate in. The brand didn't just sell luggage, it sold identity. And identity, once forged, is one of the most powerful currencies on earth. By the early 20th century, Louis Vuitton was already a respected name in Europe. But the world was expanding, and with it came the rise of a new kind of traveler: the global elite. Industrial magnates, royalty, entertainers. They all demanded luggage that was not only practical, but a statement of refinement. And Louis Vuitton became the passport to that world. Georges Vuitton, Louis's son, was determined to cement the brand's place on the world stage. In 1900, he presented Vuitton trunks at the Exposition Universelle in Paris, positioning the house not just as a craftsman's workshop, but as a symbol of modern luxury. 6 years later, in 1906, he introduced the steamer bag, a smaller piece designed to fit inside larger trunks. This wasn't just a clever product, it was a signal. Vuitton was evolving beyond luggage into fashion accessories, planting seeds that would bloom decades later. But success was never guaranteed. The luxury world is ruthless, and every empire faces its storms. World War I shook Europe to its core, disrupting trade and travel. For a company that thrived on the culture of grand voyages, the war years could have been disastrous. Yet the Vuitton name endured. When peace returned, so did glamour. The Roaring Twenties brought jazz, Art Deco, and a new obsession with style. For the wealthy, showing off was part of life, and Vuitton pieces became essential props in this theater of extravagance. It wasn't only about Europe anymore. America was rising, Hollywood was booming, and with it came a new type of celebrity culture. Stars needed to be seen with the right symbols. A Vuitton trunk wasn't just luggage. It was proof that you belonged to the international elite. In photographs of ocean liners leaving New York for Paris, Vuitton trunks stood out like badges of honor, stacked high as if announcing their owner's status before they even set foot on deck. The Second World War, however, cast a darker shadow. The Vuitton family faced accusations of collaboration with Nazi occupiers, as many businesses in France did. Stores stayed open, and profits were made even during occupation. This chapter remains controversial and often overlooked in the glossy retellings of the brand's history. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Luxury is not immune to politics. Sometimes survival in business means moral compromises. And while this didn't destroy Louis Vuitton, it left a stain that historians continue to debate. After the war, Georges' son, Gaston Louis Vuitton, took over. He was more than just a caretaker of the brand. He was a collector, a man fascinated by art, literature, and culture. Under him, Louis Vuitton embraced innovation again. The company experimented with lighter materials, new shapes, and eventually began producing handbags that appealed not only to travelers, but to everyday consumers. The line between luggage and fashion was blurring, and Vuitton was ahead of the curve. The 1950s and 60s were transformative decades. Air travel was becoming mainstream, shrinking the world and creating new kinds of consumers who wanted luxury in smaller, more personal forms. In 1959, Vuitton introduced a new coated canvas that was both flexible and durable. This breakthrough allowed the monogram to appear on handbags, wallets, and accessories, not just trunks. Overnight, the Vuitton brand expanded from the cabins of ships and trains into the streets and wardrobes of the modern city. This was the birth of Vuitton as we recognize it today. The Speedy, the Keepall, and other iconic bags emerged, quickly becoming staples for celebrities and socialites. When Audrey Hepburn requested a smaller version of the Keepall, the Speedy 25 was born, a handbag that remains one of the most coveted in the world. Suddenly, Louis Vuitton was no longer just about travel. It was about lifestyle. And in the age of cinema and magazines, lifestyle was everything. But with visibility came a new challenge. How do you keep a luxury brand rare when everyone wants it? Vuitton walked this tightrope carefully. Prices remained high, distribution tightly controlled. No discounts, no outlets. The message was clear. If you wanted Louis Vuitton, you had to pay the price, both literally and symbolically. The exclusivity wasn't just about owning the product. It was about belonging to a tribe. The 1970s brought turbulence. Family-run luxury houses across Europe struggled with modernization and global competition. For Vuitton, the challenge was to expand without diluting its essence. Gaston Louis' passing in 1970 left the company in transition, and leadership eventually fell to his son-in-law, Henri Racamier. It was Racamier who pushed Vuitton into the modern age. He professionalized operations, expanded internationally, and took risks that would forever change the luxury industry. Under Racamier's leadership, Vuitton opened boutiques around the world, including in Asia, where appetite for luxury was exploding. By the 1980s, Louis Vuitton wasn't just a European treasure. It was a global icon. The brand went public in 1984, raising capital to fuel its expansion. And then came a historic move. In 1987, Louis Vuitton merged with Moet Hennessy, creating LVMH, the luxury conglomerate that today dominates the industry. Vuitton was no longer just a family brand. It was the cornerstone of an empire. But with growth came new pressures. Counterfeiting reached unprecedented levels in the late 20th century. Street corners from New York to Bangkok overflowed with fake Vuitton bags, some laughably poor in quality, others dangerously convincing. The brand fought back fiercely, pouring resources into legal battles and anti-counterfeit campaigns. Yet the irony remained. The more people copied Vuitton, the more it proved that Vuitton had transcended product. It was now pure symbol. The 1990s marked a new era of creativity. Designers like Marc Jacobs, who joined in 1997, reimagined what Vuitton could be. Jacobs introduced ready-to-wear fashion, bringing the house fully into the world of clothing. He collaborated with artists like Steven Sprouse, who famously splashed graffiti across the monogram, and Takashi Murakami, who reinterpreted it in vibrant colors. These moves were daring, even risky, but they worked. Vuitton proved it could be both heritage and modernity, both tradition and rebellion. Think about the psychology at play. Owning a Vuitton piece wasn't just about durability anymore. It was about identity in a fast-changing world. The monogram, once a tool to fight counterfeits, had become a blank canvas for reinvention. Each new twist kept the brand relevant while reinforcing its core: luxury, exclusivity, and storytelling. But here's a question. Why do we care so much about logos, about these repeating patterns on fabric? The answer lies in something deeper than fashion. Humans are tribal creatures. We use symbols to signal belonging, power, and aspiration. A Vuitton bag is not just an accessory, it's a badge. It says, "I am part of the world that matters." And in societies obsessed with status, that badge is priceless. Of course, critics often accuse luxury brands of manipulation, of selling illusions rather than real value. And there's truth to that. A Vuitton bag doesn't make you wealthier, wiser, or happier. But here's the paradox. Because enough people believe in its meaning, it becomes real. In the social currency of perception, Vuitton is gold. As the 2000s dawned, Louis Vuitton's revenue soared. LVMH, under Bernard Arnault, turned the brand into the crown jewel of its empire. Vuitton stores became architectural marvels, designed not just to sell products, but to create experiences. In cities like Tokyo, New York, and Dubai, Vuitton boutiques resembled art galleries, elevating shopping into a ritual of luxury. And yet, amidst all the glamour, the brand continued to honor its roots. The Asnières workshop still produced custom trunks for special clients. These weren't just nostalgic gestures. They were reminders that at the heart of Vuitton's global empire was still the humble craft of making luggage. The boy who walked 300 miles to Paris would probably never have imagined such heights. But his spirit lingered in every stitch, every lock, every canvas panel. By this point, Louis Vuitton had become something larger than a fashion house. It was a cultural icon, a name woven into music lyrics, films, and art. Rappers flaunted it as a symbol of success, while celebrities showcased it on red carpets. The brand was no longer just associated with aristocrats. It had become a universal shorthand for having made it. But herein lies the tension. Can a brand remain luxurious if everyone recognizes it? Doesn't ubiquity kill exclusivity? Vuitton's answer was to constantly reinvent while never discounting. You could see Vuitton everywhere, but you could never buy it cheaply. The scarcity was not in visibility, but in access. And that strategy kept the aura alive. By the mid-2000s, Louis Vuitton was the world's most valuable luxury brand, generating billions annually. And yet, despite its size, the company cultivated an almost mythic aura of craftsmanship, heritage, and artistry. Consumers weren't just buying bags, they were buying into a story that spanned centuries. The rise of Louis Vuitton, from a penniless teenager trekking through France to the flagship of the world's largest luxury group, is a story of vision, resilience, and evolution. But it's also a mirror, reflecting our own human desires for beauty, for status, for meaning. Vuitton didn't invent those desires. It harnessed them, and this raises a provocative thought. Perhaps the true genius of Louis Vuitton lies not in making luxury goods, but in making us believe that carrying them changes who we are. Whether you admire it, criticize it, or dream of owning it, Vuitton is no longer just a brand. It's a language of aspiration. As the 2010s unfolded, Louis Vuitton continued to redefine what luxury could mean. Collaborations with contemporary artists like Jeff Koons, Yayoi Kusama, and Virgil Abloh brought the monogram into the realm of pop culture, transforming classic icons into bold statements. These partnerships weren't just marketing stunts. They were proof that Vuitton could honor tradition while embracing creativity. Each limited edition piece became a conversation starter, a collectible, a bridge between art and fashion. The brand was no longer just luggage or handbags. It was a canvas for cultural dialogue, and everyone wanted a piece of it. Yet the real genius of Louis Vuitton isn't just in its collaborations. It's in the psychology of desire. Consider this. Every Vuitton bag carries the weight of history. When someone picks up a Speedy or a Neverfull, they are holding over a century of innovation, triumph, and storytelling. That history gives the object its power. It's why the bag commands attention, why people covet it even in a world flooded with alternatives. The object becomes more than a product. It's a narrative in your hands, a story you can wear. Digital transformation added another layer. Vuitton embraced e-commerce, social media, and influencer culture without diluting its prestige. Instagram became a runway, and TikTok a gallery, allowing the brand to communicate directly with a younger generation. Yet every post, every campaign, reinforced the same message. Louis Vuitton is aspiration, excellence, and identity all wrapped in one. The balance is delicate, too casual, and the mystique vanishes, too rigid, and the brand risks alienating new audiences. Vuitton's genius has always been in navigating this tension with grace. But even today, the brand's rise is more than just clever marketing. It's the culmination of over 180 years of calculated risk-taking, relentless innovation, and devotion to craft. From the boy walking hundreds of miles to the bustling global headquarters in Paris, the story is a masterclass in building enduring value. Each generation faced challenges, wars, imitators, shifting markets, and each time, the brand adapted without losing its core identity. That adaptability, combined with a commitment to excellence, explains why Louis Vuitton is not only surviving, but thriving in a hyper-competitive global market. The cultural resonance of Vuitton is also fascinating. It's one thing to be a luxury brand. It's another to become a symbol of success across music, film, and social media. In hip-hop lyrics, Vuitton represents making it against all odds. On red carpets, it signals refinement and taste. In everyday life, even a glimpse of the monogram can evoke aspiration. Vuitton has become a universal shorthand for achievement, not because it forces anyone to feel that way, but because it has embedded itself into the collective imagination. The brand has transcended material value to achieve cultural significance. Yet, beneath all the glamour and storytelling, the essence of Vuitton remains craft. Each trunk, bag, or accessory is meticulously designed, hand-assembled, and inspected. It is easy to forget that behind the glittering monograms and glossy boutiques are artisans whose dedication mirrors that of Louis himself, more than a century earlier. This continuity between past and present, between innovation and tradition, gives the brand its unmatched credibility. When you hold a Vuitton bag, you hold decades of expertise in your hands. That's a tangible connection to history, a bridge from ambition to mastery. Interestingly, the brand has managed to maintain its allure in a world increasingly skeptical of conspicuous consumption. How? By evolving its narrative. Vuitton doesn't just sell luxury. It sells a story, a dream, and a sense of belonging. Even in markets flooded with alternatives, the brand maintains authority because it doesn't compete solely on style or materials. It competes on meaning. Each product carries a promise. You are joining a lineage of elegance, innovation, and refinement. That promise, more than the leather or canvas, is what people invest in emotionally and financially. The rise of Louis Vuitton also teaches lessons about the power of vision and timing. Louis himself saw a gap in the market for well-made, elegant luggage. Georges, his son, recognized the threat of imitators and turned protection into artistry. Later generations saw global expansion, celebrity culture, and the digital revolution as opportunities to redefine what the brand could mean. At every step, success wasn't inevitable. It was earned by anticipating change, embracing risk, and refusing to compromise core values. There's a lesson here for anyone in business or life. Longevity isn't about luck. It's about strategic foresight, married to relentless execution. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of Louis Vuitton's story is its emotional resonance. This is a brand that has transcended utility to become a symbol of human aspiration. Each bag, each trunk, each boutique carries an unspoken promise that excellence is possible, that dreams can be tangible, and that history can be woven into daily life. People invest in Vuitton not merely for the object itself, but for the narrative it represents. A narrative of perseverance, elegance, and identity. That emotional connection is priceless. The global impact is staggering. Louis Vuitton has boutiques on 6 continents, employs tens of thousands, and generates billions in revenue each year. But numbers alone don't capture its influence. The brand shapes culture, inspires art, and sets trends in a way few other companies can. It demonstrates the interplay between commerce and culture, between functionality and symbolism. Vuitton has become a template for how a product can evolve into an icon, a lesson studied by marketers, designers, and entrepreneurs worldwide. In the end, the rise of Louis Vuitton is a story about more than bags or trunks. It's a story about human ambition, creativity, and resilience. It is about a boy who walked hundreds of miles and dared to imagine a future bigger than his circumstances. It's about a family that nurtured a craft into a global language of aspiration. It's about how objects can carry meaning, and how a single vision, executed with precision and passion, can echo across centuries. So the next time you see someone carrying a Vuitton bag, pause and consider. You're witnessing the culmination of nearly 2 centuries of innovation, artistry, and vision. That simple object carries a story of risk, reward, and relentless pursuit of excellence. And it reminds us that what we create, if done with care, courage, and imagination, can outlive us, inspire millions, and become something far greater than its material parts. Louis Vuitton didn't just rise, it became timeless. And that is the lesson we carry forward. Greatness is born from vision, nurtured through craft, and cemented by the stories we choose to tell. If you enjoyed this journey through history and ambition, make sure to subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden power behind the world's most iconic brands.